Good evening. I'm Alex Truth.
And I'm Maya Clarity. Welcome to Truth Report. Tonight, we're investigating a pattern of violence that mainstream media calls isolated incidents, but the evidence tells a very different story.
At approximately 7 a.m. local time this morning, a Russian drone struck a residential apartment building in Dnipro, Ukraine. 7 people injured. Windows shattered. Fire erupted through the building. According to Al Jazeera reporting from the scene, this is just the latest in what has become a systematic campaign of terror.
And when I say systematic, I mean exactly that. We're going to show you the pattern tonight, because this isn't about one drone strike. This is about a deliberate military strategy designed to weaponize winter itself against civilian populations.
Let's start with the facts on the ground in Dnipro. This city, home to nearly 1 million people, has become a testing ground for what military analysts are now calling infrastructure warfare. The drone that hit this morning wasn't aiming for military targets. It hit an apartment block where families were waking up, getting ready for work, making breakfast.
And here's what the corporate press won't tell you. Dnipro has been under relentless assault since the beginning of January. According to reporting from the Kyiv Independent and multiple sources on the ground, on January 6, 8 people were injured in a large-scale drone attack that damaged a vocational school, 2 kindergartens, a music school, and 10 apartment buildings. Heating networks were destroyed. Trolleybuses burned out in the streets.
That's 2 major attacks in Dnipro in just over 2 weeks. But zoom out, and the picture becomes even more disturbing. According to data compiled by the Institute for the Study of War and corroborated by UN officials, Russia has carried out more than 1,100 attacks on Ukraine's infrastructure since the start of 2026. That's roughly equal to the combined total of 2024 and 2023.
Let me repeat that because it's staggering, more infrastructure attacks in 3 weeks of January 2026 than in the previous 2 years combined. This is escalation, and it's happening while diplomatic channels talk about peace negotiations. The disconnect is obscene.
On the night of January 8 through 9, Russia launched 242 drones and 36 missiles across Ukraine. Then, just 4 days later on January 13, another barrage, 293 drones, 18 ballistic missiles, 7 cruise missiles. According to Ukrainian officials and verified by multiple international sources, these strikes hit critical energy infrastructure in Kyiv, Zaporizhia, Odessa, Sumy, Kharkiv, and Donetsk.
The result? Hundreds of thousands of households in the Kyiv region alone were left without power as temperatures fell to minus 15 degrees Celsius. That's 5 degrees Fahrenheit. In Zaporizhia and Dnipro, entire oblasts went dark on January 7. This isn't collateral damage. This is the objective.
And let's talk about what that means on the ground. When temperatures drop to minus 19 degrees Celsius, which they did in Kyiv in mid-January, losing heat isn't an inconvenience. It's a death sentence for the elderly, for children, for anyone without the resources to flee. UN officials stated explicitly that these attacks violate international humanitarian law, calling them unacceptable and unjustifiable. But who's holding Russia accountable?
No one. And that's the point we need to understand. According to analysis from Medusa and energy experts monitoring the conflict, Ukraine's available generating capacity has fallen from 33.7 gigawatts at the start of the invasion to about 14 gigawatts as of January 2026. That's a 58% reduction in the country's ability to keep the lights on, to heat homes, to pump water.
Since last summer, Russia has expanded its campaign. They're not just hitting major power plants anymore. According to reporting from Critical Threats and Al Jazeera, they're now targeting smaller regional substations, especially in border areas and regions close to the front line. This is a tactical shift designed to fracture the entire grid, making it nearly impossible to reroute power or maintain basic services.
Let's be clear about the human cost. On January 18, more than 200 drones targeted Sumy, Kharkiv, Dnipro, Zaporizhia, Khmelnytsky, and Odessa. 2 people were killed. Dozens wounded. After the massive strike on January 8, more than 400,000 households lost electricity in Kyiv alone. Over 6,000 apartment buildings lost heating in sub-freezing temperatures.
And here's where the pattern becomes impossible to ignore. Every single one of these attacks happens during the coldest part of winter. Every single one targets the infrastructure that keeps people alive. This isn't a military campaign against armed forces. This is collective punishment of civilian populations, and it meets every definition of a war crime under international law.
The question we have to ask is, why now? Why this dramatic escalation in January 2026? And who benefits from turning Ukraine into an uninhabitable frozen wasteland? Because make no mistake, that's the strategic objective here.
According to analysis from Russia Matters and multiple defense analysts, this escalation coincides with renewed diplomatic pressure for peace talks. Russia is using civilian suffering as leverage. The message is clear: accept our terms, or watch your people freeze in the dark. It's extortion backed by missiles and drones.
And let's talk about those drones for a moment, because this is where the international complicity becomes visible. These aren't just Russian-made weapons. According to investigations by Ukrainian officials and international arms monitoring groups, many of these Shahid-type drones contain components manufactured in Western countries, shipped through third parties, assembled in Iran, and delivered to Russia.
So we have a situation where the same Western governments condemning these attacks are allowing the supply chains that make them possible to continue operating. That's not hypocrisy. That's active participation in war crimes through willful negligence.
Back to Dnipro, to this morning's attack. 7 people injured. 1 building severely damaged. And tomorrow, there will be another attack. And the day after that, another. Because the pattern holds. According to data from Euronews and the Ukrainian military, Russia is now launching drone attacks almost daily, with massive coordinated strikes every few days.
On January 2nd, one of the largest drone attacks of the war hit Zaporizhia. On January 10th, oil depots were struck. On January 13th, the second major barrage in 4 days. On January 18th, 2 killed and dozens wounded across multiple cities. And today, January 22nd, Dnipro again. The calendar tells the story.
And here's what makes this even more chilling. According to reporting from NPR and military analysts tracking the conflict, these attacks are becoming more sophisticated. Russia is using hypersonic missiles alongside swarms of cheaper drones, overwhelming air defense systems through sheer volume. Even when Ukraine shoots down 240 drones out of 293, the 53 that get through are enough to cripple critical infrastructure.
Let me paint the picture of what life looks like in Dnipro right now, in Kiev, in Zaporizhia. You wake up not knowing if you'll have electricity. If you'll have heat. If the water will run. You send your kids to school in buildings that might be targeted. You go to work past bombed-out apartment blocks and burned trolleybuses. You live in a constant state of terror, knowing that at any moment, a drone could erase you and everything you love.
And the international response? Statements of concern. Condemnations. More weapons shipments that may or may not arrive in time. But no meaningful intervention to stop the slaughter. No enforcement of international law. No consequences for Russia that would actually change the calculus of this campaign.
The UN Security Council is paralyzed because Russia has veto power. The International Criminal Court has issued warrants that will never be enforced. NATO draws lines it refuses to defend. And meanwhile, every single night, families in Dnipro huddle together in the dark, praying that the next drone isn't aimed at them.
This is what modern warfare looks like when the international order has completely collapsed. When the rules-based system reveals itself to be a fiction maintained only when convenient for those in power. Russia violates international humanitarian law every single day, and the world's response is to issue press releases.
But here's what we need to understand about why this matters beyond Ukraine. This is a blueprint. Russia is demonstrating that a major power can commit systematic war crimes against civilian populations, can deliberately target infrastructure to cause mass suffering, can weaponize winter and hunger and darkness, and face no meaningful consequences.
Which means every authoritarian regime on Earth is watching and learning. If Russia can do this to Ukraine with impunity, what's stopping similar campaigns elsewhere? What's stopping the targeting of power grids in Taiwan, or water systems in disputed territories, or heating infrastructure in any future conflict?
The precedent being set right now in cities like Dnipro is that civilian suffering is a legitimate military tactic. That international law is meaningless. That the strong can brutalize the weak as long as they have nuclear weapons as a shield against intervention.
And let's connect this to the broader pattern we've been tracking. This isn't just about Russia and Ukraine. This is about a global shift toward total war, where the distinction between combatants and civilians, between military and civilian targets, is being deliberately erased.
According to analysis from the Washington Times and multiple sources, even in Russian-occupied territories of Ukraine, drone strikes are cutting power to hundreds of thousands. This isn't just attacking your enemy. This is attacking populations under your own occupation. The cruelty is the point.
Since the start of this war, nearly 4 years ago now, we've watched the slow normalization of atrocities. Each escalation becomes the new baseline. Each war crime becomes just another news item. And the most dangerous thing happening isn't the attacks themselves, it's our collective acceptance of them as inevitable.
The drone that hit Dnipro this morning injured 7 people. Their names won't make international headlines. Their suffering will be reduced to a casualty count. And by tomorrow, there will be a new attack, new victims, and the cycle will continue.
Unless we break it. Unless we demand actual accountability, not just for Russia but for every actor enabling this nightmare. The countries supplying components. The financial systems processing payments. The diplomatic channels that prioritize stability over justice.
This morning's attack in Dnipro is a test. It's asking whether we still believe civilian lives matter. Whether international law means anything. Whether the world will tolerate the deliberate immiseration of millions in the name of geopolitical strategy.
And based on the evidence, based on the pattern of escalation and the absence of consequences, the answer appears to be, we will tolerate anything. As long as it's happening over there. As long as it's not our homes being bombed, our children freezing in the dark.
7 people injured in Dnipro this morning. 7 families destroyed. And the drones are already being loaded for tomorrow's attack. The pattern holds because we allow it to hold.
When we come back, the connections between infrastructure warfare, global power dynamics, and what this means for conflicts to come. This is Truth Report. Stay with us.
Welcome back to Truth Report. We've been investigating the Russian drone strike on Dnipro this morning and the broader campaign of infrastructure warfare targeting Ukrainian civilians. Now we need to zoom out and ask the harder questions.
Because here's what's really happening. According to energy analysts and military strategists tracking this conflict, Russia's campaign isn't about controlling territory anymore. It's about making Ukraine uninhabitable. About creating such catastrophic humanitarian conditions that either the population flees or the government collapses.
This is ethnic cleansing through infrastructure destruction. It's genocide by freezing temperatures and darkness. And it's working. According to UN refugee data, millions of Ukrainians have already fled. Millions more are displaced internally. And every attack like this morning's strike on Dnipro pushes more people toward that impossible choice: stay and freeze, or abandon everything you've ever known.
And let's talk about who profits from this. Because war is always about money and power, even when it's dressed up in rhetoric about national security or historical grievances. Russia's military-industrial complex is manufacturing thousands of drones. Iran is selling Shahid drones. Western companies are supplying the components, often through shell corporations and third-party distributors.
The oil and gas markets are manipulated by the conflict. Energy prices spike with each attack on Ukrainian infrastructure, benefiting producers while hurting consumers globally. Defense contractors on all sides are recording record profits. This suffering has shareholders.
And then there's the broader geopolitical game. The United States sends weapons to Ukraine, which maintains American influence in the region and provides a testing ground for military technology. European countries are forced into greater energy dependence on American LNG. Russia asserts its sphere of influence. China watches and plans.
Meanwhile, the people in that apartment building in Dnipro this morning? They're pawns. Their suffering is an externality in someone else's strategic calculation. The 7 injured victims, the families displaced, the children traumatized, they don't appear in the cost-benefit analysis of any major power.
This is what we need to understand about modern warfare. It's not nation against nation. It's power structures using nationalism as a weapon against populations. Russian oligarchs don't suffer when Dnipro loses heat. Western defense contractor CEOs don't freeze in the dark. Ukrainian political elites have bunkers and generators.
The pattern we're seeing in Ukraine is the same pattern we've seen in Yemen, in Syria, in Gaza, in every conflict where major powers or their proxies operate without meaningful constraints. Civilian infrastructure becomes the primary target because destroying it achieves multiple objectives: it terrorizes populations, it creates leverage for negotiations, and it generates profitable reconstruction contracts for later.
According to estimates from the World Bank and Ukrainian government officials, rebuilding Ukraine's energy infrastructure alone will cost hundreds of billions of dollars. Guess who'll get those contracts? The same companies profiting from the weapons destroying it now. It's a closed loop of destruction and reconstruction, with corporations extracting wealth at both ends.
And this brings us to the question no one in power wants to answer: how does this end? Because the current trajectory leads nowhere except more suffering. More drone strikes on cities like Dnipro. More civilians injured and killed. More infrastructure destroyed. More people forced to choose between freezing or fleeing.
The official narrative is that we're waiting for a diplomatic solution, for negotiations to produce a peace agreement. But you can't negotiate with someone actively committing war crimes while the bombs are still falling. Russia launches 300 drones one night, then sends diplomats to talk peace the next morning. It's not diplomacy. It's extortion.
And Ukraine is trapped. Accept a peace that rewards aggression and legitimizes the conquest of territory, or continue fighting while your civilian population is systematically brutalized. There's no good option, which is exactly what Russia is counting on.
But here's what really keeps me up at night. This strategy works because the international system is fundamentally broken. The United Nations can't act because Russia has a veto. The International Criminal Court can issue warrants but has no enforcement mechanism. NATO won't intervene directly because of nuclear escalation risks. So Russia can do whatever it wants, and the only check on its behavior is how much suffering its own population will tolerate.
And Russian populations are insulated from the costs of this war. The fighting happens in Ukraine. The sanctions hurt ordinary Russians, but oligarchs have workarounds. State media controls the narrative. Dissent is criminalized. So there's no internal pressure to stop.
Which means this will continue until one of 3 things happens: Ukraine collapses, Russia decides it's achieved enough objectives to declare victory, or some external shock changes the calculation. None of those outcomes involve justice for the victims or accountability for the war crimes.
The 7 people injured in Dnipro this morning won't get justice. The families who've lost loved ones in previous attacks won't see the perpetrators prosecuted. The children growing up in bombed cities won't receive reparations for their stolen childhoods. Because the system isn't designed to deliver justice. It's designed to manage great power competition.
And that's the real story here. That's what connects this drone strike to every other story we cover. Whether it's corporate malfeasance or political corruption or military aggression, the pattern is always the same. Those with power operate without accountability, and those without power suffer the consequences.
The residents of Dnipro didn't choose this war. They didn't vote for the politicians whose decisions led to this moment. They just wanted to live their lives, raise their families, go to work, maybe take a vacation once in a while. Normal human things. And now they're living in a war zone because people thousands of miles away made decisions in boardrooms and government offices.
This is the machinery of empire, and it runs on human suffering. Every drone strike, every missile, every bomb is a choice made by someone who will never face the consequences. And until we dismantle that machinery, until we build systems that actually hold power accountable, this will keep happening.
Dnipro today. Somewhere else tomorrow. Different countries, different contexts, same underlying dynamics. Power operating without constraint, populations paying the price.
So what do we do? What's the path forward? Because it's not enough to just document the atrocities. We have to fight back. And I don't mean with weapons. I mean with truth, with solidarity, with the refusal to accept that this is inevitable.
Every drone strike on Ukrainian civilians is a war crime. Say it. Don't hedge with alleged or possible violations. Russia is systematically targeting civilian infrastructure in violation of international humanitarian law. That's not opinion. That's documented fact supported by evidence from UN officials, international observers, and thousands of witnesses.
Every Western government that allows components for those drones to be manufactured and shipped is complicit. Every bank that processes the transactions is complicit. Every media outlet that both sides this conflict or treats Russian propaganda as worthy of equal consideration is complicit.
And every citizen in democratic countries who shrugs and says, that's just how geopolitics works is complicit. Because we have power too. We can demand our governments take real action. We can support Ukrainian civilians directly. We can refuse to let this become normalized.
The 7 people injured in Dnipro this morning are real human beings with names and families and dreams. They're not statistics. They're not collateral damage. They're victims of a crime, and they deserve justice.
And the pattern we've exposed tonight, over 1,100 infrastructure attacks in 3 weeks, systematic targeting of heating and electricity in freezing temperatures, escalation designed to maximize civilian suffering, this isn't war. This is terror. And it demands a response.
Not military intervention necessarily, though sanctions with teeth would be a start. Asset seizures. Criminal prosecutions. Reparations. Reconstruction aid that doesn't enrich the same corporations profiting from destruction. Real consequences that change the calculus for future aggressors.
Because if we don't establish accountability here, if we let this pass without meaningful consequences, we're writing the playbook for every future conflict. We're saying that civilian infrastructure is fair game. That causing mass suffering is an acceptable tactic. That might makes right.
The choice is ours. The people in Dnipro can't stop this on their own. The Ukrainian military can shoot down 240 drones out of 300, but those 60 that get through still destroy lives. They need the international community to actually enforce international law.
This morning, 7 people were injured by a Russian drone strike on a residential building in Dnipro, Ukraine. That's where we started tonight. But it's not where we end. Because those 7 people are connected to thousands of other victims, to millions suffering under this campaign, to billions who need to know that the rules matter and justice is possible.
This is Truth Report. We investigate, we expose, and we demand accountability. Not because it's easy, but because it's necessary. Thank you for watching, and please, don't let this become just another story you scroll past. These are real lives. Act accordingly.
I'm Alex Truth.
And I'm Maya Clarity. Stay informed. Stay engaged. And never stop demanding the truth.